Welcome to our webinar on Adobe Express Libraries and Photoshop Essentials. We'll just start with our statement of acknowledgement. We acknowledge this land that we meet on today is the traditional lands for the Kaurna people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region, and their cultural heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. We also pay respects to the cultural authority of Aboriginal people attending from other areas of South Australia and Australia present here. And now I will hand over to Eric from Adobe.
Thanks, Lynn, and I'm tuning in from Kaurna country as well and pay my respects to the traditional owners, and I'm very grateful to be able to live and work and learn on Kaurna country. It's such beautiful land. All right, so I will share my screen. So there's my window. All right, so just before we get started, I will say that we had a bit of a conversation earlier how, Photoshop can be a little bit scary and it can be difficult to get started. And so I really I've approached this session from that perspective because I know what that feels like. When I was teaching, I always had great intentions to learn Photoshop, and it just seemed like it was going to take too much time. I didn't really know where to get started. And now that since I've been doing this job, I've had a bit of time to actually explore and find out what are some of the key things that you can really use to do some pretty cool things with Photoshop. So I've tried to streamline that, condense that a little bit into just a few sort of tips and tricks that you can hopefully keep and get started with Photoshop. So we'll be looking at Photoshop a bit and how Creative Cloud libraries work between some of the Adobe apps, so that you can pass assets between Adobe apps, and I'll explain why that's really helpful in a minute. So we'll jump into Adobe Express to do a little bit of Firefly and get our images started, and then go a little bit deeper and do some more high precision editing in Photoshop. So our learning objectives, these are the things that we will do. We'll open a project from a file, start a new project with presets and custom dimensions. You'll learn how to select, navigate, and customize the workspace, which is really important. Use Creative Cloud libraries to access assets from other creative tools. So we'll look at Adobe Express, and I'll also show you how to get images from Firefly web app into Photoshop as well, using the Creative Cloud libraries. You'll expand an image using generative expand. So one of the things about Photoshop now, the newer version, and if you should be using the latest version, I think it's version 25.5. Then you have all of the Firefly, the generative AI integrations are in Photoshop, and that really accelerates some of the editing things that you can do with Photoshop, and it just helps you to do things that otherwise you wouldn't be able to do unless you were a pro. So we'll look at the different selection tools and how to use them. We'll use generative fill to add some elements to your project. We'll work with layers and layer masks. That's really important to understand layers and layer masks and how to edit the workspace non-destructively. And then we'll apply some adjustment filters. And finally, save and export the project. Okay, so the first thing really is getting started. So I'll jump straight into Photoshop here, and if you've got it, you can do the same. When you do jump in, you'll hit this home page where you'll see straight away your Creative Cloud doc files. So I've got mine all organized into folders here, but if you don't have files, and only Photoshop files will show up here. So if you've got files, you can, in your Creative Cloud, you can start from that. Otherwise, you can start a new file. This will take you to custom dimensions. If you want to open from an image, just click open, and then you can go to projects, find your file, and then select your file, and it'll open it. Or you can go straight to your folder, drag and drop it, and it will open it straight away in your project here. I don't want it to open. There we go. So this is a photo I've taken. It's my dog and my daughter. All right. So we'll leave that there. And then if you want to start a new file, just click new file, and then you get to a bunch of different presets and custom presets. So you can have a look at different ones for art and illustration, some templates, things like that are in there. So great to have a bit of an explore, and you can start from a template, something that's not Scratch, helps you get past that creative barrier sometimes. I often just use like this one here, 1920 by 1080. That's your PowerPoint slide size. So I like to use that slide size sometimes, or I'd use just the square 1080 by 1080. All right, so I'll just select that one for now anyway. Double click and it'll go in, and then you get your transparent background, and you can sort of start from wherever you are. So the first thing to look at, and the interface can be scary, like it can look pretty scary, and I get that. We've got our window over here, which is our editing window, and this is a fully customizable window. Our tools are over here, so there's lots of different tools to choose from, and if you go into here, then you can edit your toolbar to put your favorites in whatever order and add some tools, etc. And then you've got your global menu, your tabs up here, and you'll have some functions for each tool up the top here, so you'll be able to see when you select a tool, these are the properties of the tool that you're using. So as you select different ones, so this is your select tool, you can change the size, etc. Up here. So this interface, what this is called is the workspace. And if you go to Window, Workspace, then you have a bunch of different workspaces that you can choose from. So I've just got the essentials on there, and that works really well for me. I'm not a pro. You can look at graphic design or web design, motion painting. There's a bunch of different workspaces that you can select from there. But this is the essentials one, and it's pretty good. And then the next thing to notice here in your editing window, you have these different selections here. So this is your history. So as you do edits along your project or throughout your project, you can always go back and look through the history, and you can actually, if you select here, you can view it or hide it. So you can actually change something that you've done previously really, really easily, which is good. You don't have to just go undo, 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 which is not a productive way to try and fix a mistake. And then we have all of our different panels here that we can use, and these are your editing panels. So these are fully customizable, these panels. So here I like to have my layers down here. Most of the time I'll have this one minimized. So this is where I can see my colors, swatches, gradients, patterns, etc. I like to have them on there, because if I want to change a color or put a pattern in or something like that, then it's really easy just to access them there. But I like to have my layers panel nice and big, because as you add elements, then you're adding layers, and we'll talk about layers in a little bit, and this can get quite big, and you really need to be interacting with your layers panel probably the most out of anything. And whenever you have a layer selected, you can see the properties of the layer, their adjustments, and then I have my libraries in here as well. If you're looking for something and you can't find it, or an editing panel, if you go to Window, and then these are all of your different editing panels here, or your different windows here, right? So you can see we've got my layers ticked because my layers is out there, properties, options, etc. If there's one that you want to use, let's say you want to use the navigator. So the navigator's up here, and it's embedded into this vertical panel here. You can pull it out if you want, and then it's a floating panel, and put it anywhere you like if you want to interact with it closer. if you want to add it to one of your other panels, you can see the blue guides, and I'm just clicking and dragging. So I'm holding this down. You can see the. So this is sort of how I like to organize my editing window, because I've got my layers here. I need that to be nice and big. Whenever I have a layer selected, I can do some work with the properties of that layer. I can put adjustments over that layer, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And if I want to bring assets in, then my libraries are at hand here, and I usually just extend my libraries out a little bit like that. Okay, cool. So let me just flick back here to make sure that we're keeping on track. So we've just adjusted the workspace, looked at windows, and spoken a bit about floating panels. All right, let's talk a bit about tools. So your tools are on the side here. These first 4 or so tools are the ones that I use the most. And you can't see it because it's extending into my other screen, but as you hover over tools, you get a little window popping up with a little tutorial or a quick video that you can see that explains what that tool does. They are super, super helpful. So if you are just curious and trying to learn what the tools are, it's a great idea as you hover over the tools. Just click on those videos. They're like less than a minute, at least less than 2 minutes, and just are great to getting to know the different tools that you can use. These first 4 or 5 tools are the ones that I use the most. So this is just the move tool, where you can click on objects and move them around really easily. And these 3 are your different selection tools. Super important to understand your selection tools. This marquee tool allows you to select a shape, and then once you select something, then you know what? I should probably go into a file. Let's go into my image file.
Yeah.
Right. So if I wanted to move something, right, you can, oh, okay, so this is good. This is a background layer at the moment. So you can see Photoshop has recognized that I want to do something to the image, and it's saying, you can't move a background layer. Do you want to change it to a normal layer? So yes, I do want to change it to a normal layer, and then it becomes a little bit more editable. If you want to select certain things, you can use that marquee tool to make a selection, right? And then you can move bits around like that. Undo, deselect, we'll put that back. If you click and hold these tools, you can see variations of the tool, or right click the tool and you get to see variations of the tool as well. So this is the rectangular marquee tool. If I chose the elliptical marquee tool, you can see that it changes here and it stays there until you change it back. So an ellipse like this, right, that's a selection, and then you can sort of move and make edits to that selection. So undo, deselect, and when you make a selection, this toolbar here is a contextual toolbar. So when you do something to your image, then the contextual toolbar will come up and it will give you some prompts that are related to the action that you're doing. So if I make a selection here and I wanted to get Firefly to put something in there, then I could do that. You could type a prompt in. So let's just say cloud of smoke. See what happens. So now this is Adobe Firefly, our generative AI tool, doing something, making a cloud of smoke for me. So there are some other selection tools that you can use as well, just while this is loading up. All right. Nothing there for that first one, but over here, there's some smoke that's come up there, and it recognizes that this is a photo, so it'll make a cloud of smoke as if it's a photo. So that's sort of a really easy way that you can add things into your project just really easily using selections. And anytime you make a selection, you can use Firefly to generate something. So what was I showing you? The marquee tools here. So there's rows and columns as well. The lasso tool sort of allows you to freehand a little bit more. So you can sort of do whatever you want, make a selection.
the different types of lasso. So you have a polygonal lasso, which just allows you to sort of draw polygons. If you click, you can do points like that, make your selection. And that's easy for tracing geometric shapes, things like that. Or one that's pretty cool is this magnetic lasso tool, which if you put it around a subject, I might do it around my dog, it actually detects the edge of the object and it will put points all the way around the object like this to make a really tight selection. So I'm just clicking and holding at the moment to make a super tight selection around your object like that until you connect it back up. And so now I've gone a bit AWOL, but you could go right around your object and select it like that, which is a really great way to get a tight selection without having bits that you don't want in there, but it can be a little bit tedious. So my favorite tool by far, my favorite selection tool by far is this quick selection tool. So we've got a couple of different quick selection tools. Firstly, the object selection, it will detect objects for you. And because this is one image, it doesn't have multiple objects on there. It can see my Firefly object. It'll just allow you to make that selection straight away. So it detects the objects for you, and then we'll select the object. Loading. All right. And then it's selected that object. Or the magic wand tool will select things by color. So if it notices a background like this or things by color, it's similar to the object one, but it detects color more of an object. But my favorite one by far is this quick selection tool, which will, and it's probably, this is important here where you can see at the top when you're making selections, this is a negative selection. So taking away from a selection, I want a positive selection. So this is adding to the selection. Let's increase the size of the brush a little bit. And then I can click and hold and it will detect different outlines, things like that. All right. Acting a little bit funny there. All right. So the quick selection tool is good, and it's because this is still a background, so I need to layer from background. All right. That works better now. All right, so you can see it's selecting my dog really, really well. And you don't have to hold the whole time. You can just make release and then select more, release and then select more. And then you can see it selected some shadow there, but I don't want shadow, so I can take the negative part, like that. And the more times you move from negative to positive and try and highlight and try and select bits, it becomes more precise. So if I just wanted to select that part of my dog, that's great. Quick selection tool has done it. There we go. All right, so the selection tool is super important. This one's the crop tool. You can do some different sorts of cropping. I've never really used these ones. I just use this crop tool mainly to extend or to expand images. And then the rest of them, I won't go through every single one of them, but there's a bunch of different ones here. The brush tool is handy sometimes if you want to do some drawing or something over your image. The erase tool will allow you to erase freehand, and then you can add text as well. All right, so let's just touch base again and see where we're up to. So we've had a bit of a look at our selection tools. All right, we're running out of time a little bit. So Creative Cloud libraries are libraries that allow you to transfer assets from one Adobe app to another. You can also add brands, apply your brands, so you can store a color palette, graphics, those kinds of things within your brand, and then they can be accessible in different tools. So there's an activity down here, and I'm about to demonstrate this for you as well. So this is the instructions for you to start from Adobe Express. So if we're in Adobe Express here, and I'm going to, so if I'm thinking about in a classroom context, what's something that I would maybe get kids to do using Photoshop? Being a science teacher, I always would like kids to get a little bit more creative with their diagrams and images and those kinds of things. So one thing that we would often do when we were studying ecosystems is get them to make a food web. And most of the time they would just do really simple food webs. But as they kind of get their understanding to a higher level, I want them to really be able to visualize and demonstrate what that might sort of look like in a real environment. So I want them to make a creative food web. I'm going to use generative AI and text to image. So they could choose whatever sort of ecosystem they want to do, but I'm going to do an Australian bushland. And with Firefly, you don't need to be super detailed with your prompts. The more detailed you are, the better it's going to do. But I'm kind of just rolling the dice here and see if I hit a bit of a jackpot, see what comes up. And it said the prompt is too short. Do you see that notification there? So it's given me something. There's some sheep in there, which is sort of okay. Maybe I want sheep, maybe I don't. It's a bit weird. So here, for the best results, use a longer prompt. So I can say Australian bushland scene with trees and shrubs. Okay, now looking a little bit better. So this is something that's maybe a little bit more familiar. I could choose one of these. Which one's going to be the best for maybe a food web? I reckon this one's pretty good. And then your students could get creative. You could choose an art or graphic, or maybe you want to make it a photo, and then you can kind of refine some of the different movements and things like that here. So one that I find quite interesting is layered paper. So I might do a layered paper one and see what that looks like. Cool. All right. So a little bit different. Kind of busy, but look, we'll roll with that for now. Okay. So once you've got the image and you're happy with your image, you want to store it in a Creative Cloud library, transfer it to a Creative Cloud library. So make sure it's selected and then click this back button here. You can do some edits in Adobe Express, but they have lower precision and there's just a bit less that you can actually do. So to put in a library, click this 3 dots menu, add to brand or library, and then select a library. I'll just pop it in your library, add, and now it should be in my library. So I can go back to Photoshop and now look at libraries, your library, and you can see that this is set up as a brand. It's got some color palettes there, and then some graphics here. So these are a bunch of different ones that I've already stored in there. That layered paper one that I've just done maybe is still loading up, taking a minute. I'll choose one of these other ones in the meantime. This one's kind of layered paper. Let's go. So I double clicked that and that's done the wrong one, which is strange. Try this one. So I double clicked. If you double click an image in the library, then it will open the image straight away. Or another way you can bring it in is just to drag and drop it. So you might have a project that's already that you're already working on and you want to bring your asset into that project, you can drag and drop it. And then once you've done that and you're happy with where it is, you just need to acknowledge that and click the tick. And when you bring an asset in, automatically you have the cropping tool around it in case you want to crop inside. But the beauty about generative expand in Photoshop now is you can actually make your project bigger. So if I want to make this the size of a slide, then I can just pull it out. And then in my contextual taskbar here, I can type in what I want in these blank pixels here. Or if I just click generate, what Adobe Firefly is going to do is detect the pixels that are adjacent to these empty ones, and it'll predict what comes next, essentially, and it's going to fill in using generative AI the rest of these pixels here. Okay. So you get some options here that you can choose from, and then basically you've got an image that you can start with. Already you can see that there's layers being added. So every time that you add or do a generative action, it's going to add a layer on top. And if I want to view the previous layer or hide a layer, then I can just click these eye icon and toggle those on and off to see. So this is the original Firefly and then together. All right, cool. So let's have a look, see where we're up to here. All right, let's have a look at how to do that in the Firefly web app. So that link will take you here. You can generate something here. See what this does. I've misspelled scene. Now this Adobe Firefly web app is powered by Firefly Image 2. So this is the second version of Firefly. Much more high precision, and the actual images that are generated here are much better than the images that you'll get in Adobe Express. So if you're using it Gen AI in Adobe Express and you're not really happy with what they're turning out, you want them to be a little bit higher quality images, come to the web app, have a look and see what you get here. And you can see these look like photos, and then you can toggle some buttons here or push some buttons to kind of change the different things you want. Let's have a look at what layered paper looks like here. So I've done art, layered paper, and there's heaps and heaps to choose from through here. If you have an image that's you want to match the style, you can upload that image there. Anyway, I won't spend too long on Firefly. All right, so you can see these ones are much nicer than the ones that were generated in Adobe Express. So if I want to put an image into Firefly, so I've selected that image now, you can make edits here, or you can transfer it to Adobe Express, so edit in Express, or you can save it to your library. Choose a library. All right, and hopefully it's in there. Let's see, it'll take a minute to probably load up, and that other one sort of hasn't either as well. So what if I pop out, go down here. So here's one loading up. So that's the one that just loaded up. That other one from Express didn't pop in there. Maybe I made a mistake. All right, so if I double click there, then it'll open that project here. I'm actually going to use this because I think it's nicer. So let's open it out like this and generate. See what it comes up with. All right, while that's loading up, let's have a look. So we have gone into Express, Firefly, select the image, back arrow, done all that, gone into the libraries, double click, done that, drag and drop, done that. Okay, use generative expand, we've done that. So the next bit is to look a little bit closer at layers and layer masks. So when we're looking at our layers, we can see that there's some layers here. What I might do is just hop into another file here that has layers in it, just so I can talk about them because I'm a little bit conscious of time. You can see here that we've got a bunch of different layers. Each of these birds is a layer. So you can actually see which layers are which by toggling here. So now you can only see the background. The very next layer is this rainbow layer. Then we have vines, a bird, a copy of the bird. So layers are like stacks of paper, and they stack on top of each other. So each time, if I'm clicking in here and I want to make a layer over the top of that layer to sit here in the hierarchy, I just need to click there and it'll make that layer over the top of that hierarchy. We can bring in, what I'll do is you can bring in images to add to or add a new layer. So what I'll do is to bring in an image, go to File, Place Embedded, and then you can choose from your images. I'll bring this image in here. So I've just double clicked it. It's just working, and here's my image. All right, it's a bit big. I want to make it a bit smaller. We're going to bring those people in and the dog into the image. Now, obviously, that's not ideal. I want the dog and the girl to be in the image, but I don't want all the rest of it. I don't want the background to be there, right? So what you can actually do is make a mask of this image. So what I can do is look at the properties here. So make a selection, and you can see in my contextual taskbar here, and it's important to know. So sometimes if I'm looking here and there's nothing selected, you can get a little bit lost. Always go back to your layers. Which layer do I have selected? If I have that leaf selected, right, anything that I select here is going to do it to that layer. I want to be on this new image layer, and the contextual taskbar here will allow me to select the subject. So this is just a quick action that will select the subjects for me. Just taking a minute. There's my progress bar here. And you can see that it's selected those subjects, done a pretty good job. There's a little bit here, there's some shadow selected that I don't want. So what I'll do is I'll go to my quick selection tool and I'll click the negative because I want to take away from the selection, make that brush a little bit smaller still. And I just want to take away some of these selections here, like that. All right, still want that bit of the foot in there. Add that bit. Okay, so now I'm happy with my selection. And then the next thing is, what do we want to do with that selection? So there's a few things you can do here. This button here is to make a mask. This will invert the selection. So if I invert the selection, this is actually selected everything but these subjects. But that's not what I want. I want the subjects to be selected and I want to make a mask of those subjects. When you mask the subjects, it essentially hides the rest of the image and it's non-destructive. So what that means is I could get rid of the mask and that image will still be there. I can see that this mask hasn't worked that well. So actually a way that I can improve this, if I right click on the mask, have a look. So here's my mask. Mask selection. Have a look at my mask options. So now I have options for the mask here. Okay. I got going. So there's something on my other screen over here telling me about that. Okay, that's fine. Because the mask here is in black and white, if I want to reveal more of this mask, what I can do is actually use some of that color. So if I select a brush now, here's my brush tool, and then I want a small brush, this, increase the hardness a little bit. And if I make the color of that brush white, the windows keep opening up on my other screen. If I make the color of that brush white, then what I can do is actually click here and it will reveal what's hidden behind that mask. So you can see the dog's legs where it didn't actually select that well. I can reveal using the brush tool, and it works because I've used the black color, and you can see that the mask is black in color. It actually, sorry, I've used the white color, so it's revealing from that black. So that's how you can work with masks to reveal more and edit your mask a little bit. All right. On layers, black and white. So this is what I was looking for before. And here, so if you click this mask eyeball, this is how you can actually visualize your mask a little bit, and then you can actually see the mask and the subjects within the mask. So if there's a little bit here that I don't want, let's make that black again. Then I can get rid of some of these things, or just to be really obvious, if I was gonna get rid of a back leg here, so I can do some editing within this mask layer. I can do some feathering like this. You can see how the borders of the mask change a little bit. All right, and then once that's done, I can go back to on layers, and you can see I've removed the leg here by actually working with that mask itself. All right, so using mask and layers, really important to understand how to do. If you want to change something specifically about a mask, you can select the mask here, and then in the properties, sorry, I'll double click that and it just took me into the advanced properties, which isn't where I want to be. Let's cancel that. Okay, so you can make that selection, make an adjustment, and then in your adjustments, you can change things about that selection. So if I wanted to change the color of the mask, I can do this. I'm not sure if that's actually selected the mask layer. It might have gone over the top. So you can, this is an adjustment layer, and you can see the adjustment layer here has gone above my image here. So you should see everything below. Let's just put it underneath there. So if I put an adjustment layer here, you should see everything underneath change color. So my subjects here shouldn't change color as I move my hue. You can see you can change the colors, the hue, the saturation. You can make some really interesting things like this. Right, make adjustments. Or if you want to see what it looked like before, just hide that. So you can see what that layer mask, adjustment mask actually does, adjustment layer actually does. Okay, so we've spoken a little bit about masks. Always have the correct layer selected. Here's some instructions to help you guys out.
Back to Michelle's question.
Yep.
When you're adding in an image, she's asked, does it have to be an image that's saved on the computer, or is there a way to get the image straight from the Express library without having to save it to the computer? She thinks she might have missed when you went through that. That's when you add it to your library, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'll go back. So in Adobe Express here, if this is your image, when out of that, when you have the image selected here, you have your three dots, add to brand or library, and then select your library, and then whichever library you want to put it on, there it'll be. And then this one actually didn't add, did it? Let's see if that works again. So add to your library, add, and then back in Photoshop, in the libraries panel. And if you can't see any of your panels, again, just go to Windows or Window, and then have a look for the panel. Here's the libraries panel. So you can see it's ticked because I've already got it here. And then I'm in your library. That one doesn't want to, it should add there. That one doesn't want to add for some reason. This was the one that I added from Firefly there as well. And then, all right, so you can, to add from your library, you can either click and drag. So if I click and drag, then that image is going to become a part of this. And you can see that leaf's in front of it because I had a layer selected here, and I've brought that image in over that layer, but underneath other layers, right? So it is important to know, and if something like this funny is happening and you're not sure, then you need to always go back to your layers to make sure you're understanding where you are within your stack. Or if you double click it, it'll start a new project like this one has here. So one thing that I want to show you, we are out of time, aren't we? So I don't want to go over and take up too much of your time. The last thing was about removing backgrounds, and particularly when you're using Firefly images. So let me just I'll do one Firefly selection for you here, and I want the lasso tool. So let's say I want to put a koala in here, generative fill. Generate. All right, so there's a koala. Cool, that looks good. I'm happy with that. Let's keep it. I want to, above my background, I want to add an adjustment layer here that's just going to change the contrast. So let's see how it's changing the contrast there. Maybe the brightness, let's make it a little bit less bright just to highlight the koala a little bit. And you can see that the koala has a background here because it's sort of taken in that whole selection. So if I select the koala, it automatically makes it a layer mask. If I want to do edits to this, what I need to do is rasterize this layer. So rasterizing a layer makes it a pixel image, and then that makes it an editable image. As it is, from Firefly, it's a smart object, so it's limited in what you can do. But Photoshop will rasterize it for you, and then you can treat it as a normal image. And you can see straight away in properties, you can select the subject or remove the background. And then removing the background just automatically selects the subject and then removes that background, and then that should make that koala pop out nicely on that tree. There it is. So if I was going to make a food web, then this would be sort of a project I could continue on with there. All right, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I've gone 5 minutes over, and obviously there's so many functions in Photoshop. You could sort of keep going, and my advice would be just to play with it. Hopefully I've given you enough to get you started with it. Have a good play, explore, change your layers, explore adjustments, and you'll be able to do some really cool things, and your kids will be able to do some really cool things.